Hello, dear friends. This is Cardiac Radio at 11 p.m., nourishing our souls with hope and light. We are here studying this book, Esperança e Luz. This book is translated completely and under revision by Cardiac Radio's team, and we are here sharing with you its free translation. And why we're doing this? Because we are doing the countdown to Christmas. Yes, and it's the last Christmas of this decade, and we'll begin a new decade, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating because in the pipeline of the good spirits, they have beautiful things to come to the earth to be manifested, and beautiful things are going to be lying ahead. And that's not just a hopeful, wish. It's tangible because we are under the law of progress. When people doubt the progress that is naturally going to happen in life, you can reply by saying, we are under the law of progress. Look at history. We're progressing. We may be progressing slow in terms of our ethical moral principles, but we're progressing, and we are going to progress even more in the next decade. But you're being called to join in. Hope is not a wish. Hope, says Emmanuel in the preface of this book, is a divine stimulus that points to the future, to progress. And hope is also understanding and waiting. So, hope, Jesus says to Bartholomew, as in chapter 8 of the book, Good News. He says, Bartholomew, the trademark of the ones who follow the teachings of the Good News are joy, courage, and hope. Why? Because we understand that we are divine co-creators, and as such, beautiful things await us. It's just a matter of us doing our share, right? So, welcome, Teresa Castro, Sunshine, Andrea, and friends who have been joining us. I'm going to try to see if I can see other friends. Rosalind, hello, I can see. Yes, Daisy. Hello, Daisy. You see, I have to enter here to see more of you, to make sure that I can see you as well. So if I can't see everybody, I apologize, but if you don't mind saying a thing or two so we can see you and say hi, because we're in a big classroom together, different states, different countries, different continents, but all cheering up and nourishing ourselves with this new instruction by several spirits through Chico Xavier, boosting our hope, because hope is all about believing in the progress of ourselves and everyone else. Right, Alicia Ramos? And today, Emmanuel is going to disclose to us a unique revelation. He talks about spiritual genetics. As a scientist myself, I say, wow, because spiritual genetics is something that we don't talk about in schools, in medicine, or so what is this spiritual genetics? And the message we're going to read was actually psychographed in 1938. 1938, this message was psychographed. So we could say that this message is given to us first in the past century, and second, it's really almost like a century ago, I would say, averaging out, right? Paula, you're here. What a joy. Big hug to you. I hope you're better, right? So spiritual genetics, what is he going to say? Because this pertains to our lives. The message is a little bit technical, and even in Portuguese, it has some wording that is deep. So it's not like easy breezy poem. So bear with us, okay? Are you ready, friends? Yes? We are ready. After all, we need that instruction to acquire new habits and succeed in this reincarnation, right? Ready, friends? Okay, he begins. The narrow dogmatism of Earth's scientific schools is very unfortunate, as they insist in not recognizing in their very assets a series of unstable knowledge, even because they are human, saturated with relativity to which all the phenomena of the planet are subordinated, clarified by the truths of spiritism, biology, chemistry, physics, and medicine. In the future will renew their conceptions. They will renew their conceptions in the future. They will investigate the complicated problem of origins, considering, however, that humanity can only intensify its evolutionary achievements when seeking to develop its spiritual vision within the moral ascent in virtue and knowledge. You, the incarnates, are the first ones to observe the wonders already discovered. And yet, you know that the material individual will always have a limit to their inquiries into the invisible. This limit lies in the structure of the eye, whose visual potentiality is in direct correspondence with the capacity for knowledge. The material individual has already achieved much and is commendable for all the efforts in elucidating the problems of life. In the chapter of biology, the theory of genes has its importance in the biological drama, and physical heredity has its undeniable ascendancy within the species of nature. However, there is an immense field where materialistic scholars can only rely on the unlikely hypothesis if they persist in keeping distance from the unchanging truths of the spirit. Science may balance the elements of the deep genesis of beings, but it will always bump into the spiritual clarity that radiates from all these movements, ordered within certain mathematics, strange to humans and independent of their collaboration. After all, terrestrial science may specialize in its activities, surprising new compendia and cataloging new values in its study centers. But no more serious work will be done for the benefit of the human soul without a spiritualized humankind. It is this spiritual individual of the future who will be able to soar higher, because they will not have their vision limited to the limited possibilities of the physical human eye. Its field of action will be vast, encompassing the infinite, of whose unfathomable grandeur it will naturally participate by evolutionary paths. The scientist of the world should be aware of the imperatives of this spiritual genetics, whose lessons in synthesis lie here in the orb, totaling the problem of individual education and the culture of feelings. Without the study of these spiritual genes that will constitute the cells of the new social organization of the future, on the high moral plane of the individuals, scholars and their compendiums will not leave the sterilizing discussions in the abyss of hypothesis into which they were submerged. Our current concern is characterized by the effort to form as many hearts for the great cause. Sincere spiritists are the collaborators of our humble and simple task, whose success requires the utmost goodwill. Let us get to work. And while our brothers study and analyze organic cells, strive to establish balance and determine the distribution of genes across the bodies, we will organize the new genetics of beings working to build the spiritual human being of the future, when then the word of the Divine Master will bring new clarity to all hearts. This is really revolutionary, right, Carol Correa and Rihanna? It's revolutionary. He's talking about something. Remember, Spiritism is science, a science that studies the nature, the origin, the destiny of spirits, and the corporeal the relationship with the corporeal world. Now he's revealing to us a niche of expertise and studies and works that you haven't heard before. If you go to any university nowadays, nobody is going to read this term, spiritual genetics. We talk about genetics, but not spiritual genetics. So Emmanuel is also not only explaining what it is, the goal of it, but recruiting you and I to work towards it. So he's saying, first and foremost, in the first paragraphs, he's telling us that we won't be able to achieve higher levels of efficacy in understanding how we really work, who we really are, even physically, if we don't go to the source of it all, the spirit. He's saying to us that genetics of the physical body do not rule our lives. If you go to the book Missionaries of the Light, Memoirs of a Suicide, The Messengers, there's so many books I can tell you. Let's go to Thought and Life. When they talk about health, the body, family, the cradle, chapters 11, 12, 13, 14. Emmanuel, there in 1938, which is the same year of the message we're studying. Okay? 1958, 1938. We're talking about a message that comes to us to explain the origin of the organization of the physical body. So we're talking about the mind, the perispirit, the spiritual genetics that will dictate what's going to happen next. So for example, if in your family people have cancer, you may ask, Vanessa, should I be afraid? Am I going to have cancer too? Well, maybe not. Why? Because though you are connected to them, you have history together, you have bonds of affinity, it's up to your conduct to tell you if you will develop it or not. Because if you read the chapter 14th of the book Thought and Life, Emmanuel explains to us that above the physical aspect, what dictates what happens in our health is the quality of our thoughts, our feelings, and then our thoughts. So he says, feelings of anger, feelings of despair, feelings of intemperance, feelings of hatred, those feelings will trigger imbalances, and those imbalances will predispose us to illnesses. So it's a matter of really taming our emotions. Right, Paula Povoas? Right? I agree with you, Carol. We were today studying DC, right? The chapter Thought and Life, Health, and this message goes hand in hand. What What's synchronicity, huh? Spiritual genetics, and he says about the spiritual human being. The spiritual human being, and he's saying the following. Without the study of the spiritual genes, okay, he's saying before that, scientists of the world should be aware of the imperatives of spiritual genetics, whose lessons and synthesis lie here in the orb, totally in the problem of individual education and cultural feelings. Precisely. We need to take care of our emotions. So we were sharing with our friends today. We need, first and foremost, to know what we feel, to name the feelings. You may think, but I know. No, we don't know. Nobody went to the school of emotion to know. So we would say, go to Amazon and buy a dictionary of emotions. Why? Because we need to name our emotions, and in order to tame it, in order to tame them, the emotions. Let me give an example. Daniel Siegel, one of the leaders in the neuroscience of emotions, he talks about this rule: name it to tame it. I need to name my emotions in order to manage my emotions. You think you may know it, but not quite. So we need to study them, observe ourselves, and that takes time. And we're saying this because Emmanuel is saying what dictates our lives, even the physical health, is our spiritual genetics. That depends on our education and the emotions. Look at the book Memoirs of a Suicide. You think people who committed suicide because they lacked IQ? No. A super high IQ may commit suicide, and nobody has ever said that low IQ leads us to suicide. We wish it would be easy to fix it. But suicide, if you go to the Gospel according to Spiritism and to science, you're going to see the same. It's the lack of emotional management and a framework of hope. Here, chapter 5, calm and resignation. If we don't cultivate calmness and resignation, we won't be able to tame a lot of mental illnesses and this impulse to quit life. Okay? And we need to help our children not to be quitters, but we need to treat ourselves too, because usually we pass on to them what we do. So let's do this inner assessment. How are we doing in terms of our emotions? Because if shame, fear, hatred, disappointment leads us out into desperation, we will be doomed to our own mismanagement and the consequences of it all. Mental illnesses and also suicide, right? Yes, I agree with you. In the book Evolution into Worlds, chapter 19, part 2, Andrea Lewis talks about the very same aspect. They don't use the same words, but now Emmanuel is telling us spiritual genetics, and he says more, that without the study of these spiritual genes that will constitute the cells of the new social organization of the future, on the high moral plane of the individual, scholars and companies will not leave the sterilizing discussion. So he says, our current concern is characterized by the effort to form as many hearts for the great cause. Sincere spiritists are the collaborators of our humble and simple task. And it requires goodwill. So you want to help? He's saying what you were going to do. Let us get to work. Okay? He says, we will organize the new genetics of beings, working to build the spiritual human of the future, when the word of the Divine Master will bring new clarity to all hearts. What does he mean by it? Spiritual genetics and this spiritual human being. And then he brings Jesus, the Christ consciousness. He's telling us that we understand that in our mind lies our health, that our bodies will be a natural consequence of what we do with our minds. And he's telling us that it is on us to build with that new effort the new human being that is spiritualized, focused on these new teachings. So I'll give you a scenario, okay? Because it's beautiful, but in daily life, it's different. You go to work, you work hard, and then your boss give a promotion to someone else whom you know doesn't deserve it. You think they don't work as hard and they are cheating and okay. What would Jesus recommend to us? Well, if you're clean in your conscience, we shouldn't go home and be disappointed. We should think, well, if God sent me here and I didn't get this promotion, it's a sign that I don't need it. God has a better plan for me. Let me give myself time to understand God's will for me. This is the spiritual man. Let's say you got married and at some point the relationship didn't work. Disappointment, divorce, etc. What would the spiritual man do? Think, well, I tried the best as I could. That person tried as much as they could. It didn't work. Nobody belongs to anybody anyhow, right? We can't be attached, but to God. Love God above all things. So if God allows this divorce to happen, it's because there is a better plan for me. God allows it because when God doesn't allow, you don't get out of it. When you have to expiate, you will expiate. You will be there and be there and be there, dreaming about getting out of there, but you have to be there and be there. It happens. And sometimes you want to get married and you don't get married. Well, I think God has a better plan. Remember the book, Paul and Stephen, the spiritual man, Jezeel and Abigail, the spiritual humans. Jezeel, later Stephen, in Paul and Stephen by Emmanuel, through Chico Xavier, in that book, first 3 chapters, you see the beauty of Jezeel. He sees his father misbehaving. He's not angry. He is always referring to God. He sees his father being murdered before him. Of course, he's sad. He's sent to slavery in a ship. His colleagues come and say, oh, these Romans, they are so unfair. They're enslaving us. He doesn't start a rebellion. What does he do? He says, well, friends, I think God has a plan for us. And because of him putting God above all things, when he's then released, he becomes the Stephen that we know. I'm just shortcutting here. I can't tell you the story, the whole story, because if you haven't read, it's worth reading. If you have read, it's worth rereading. Right, Nora Brazil, right, friends. So for us, it's very, very important to cultivate this and join the task force of organizing the new genetics of beings. When you talk about genetics, let me give you the actual definition so we understand what Emmanuel really means when he says the word genetics. Let me get the little definition so we can get, okay, so here he is. Genetics the genetic properties or features of an organism, characteristics, we're not defined by the physical body. We're not. We're defined by our spiritual mind. So thought is life. We need to work on our emotions. Chapter 14, health of the book Thought and Life. Emmanuel says, our good emotions will lead us to good thoughts and then good attitude. So if we want to change the output, we need to coach our minds to do the good, to think the good, to feel the good. And our dear Sunshine is saying, a fantastic list of feelings by Marshall Rosenberg, Compassionate Communication. Thank you. Thank you, Sunshine. So here we have, friends, an opportunity for us, okay, to meditate on our invitation. I will read again. Sincere spiritists are the collaborator of our humble and simple task. Let us get to work. We will organize the new genetics of beings, working to build the spiritual human of the future, when the word of the Divine Master will bring new clarity to all hearts. You know, when we talk about health, you're not doomed to the genes of your family. You're not doomed to a group of cells in your physical body. They are the natural consequence of our own making in many lives. The good spirits explain to us that our diseases are byproducts of morbid predispositions that we have created when we commit injustices, says Emmanuel in 1958 in the book Thought and Life, chapter 14. And in the same year, book Evolution into Worlds, Andrea Lewis repeats it, chapter 19, part 2, by saying, when we make a grave mistake, if we don't come around and fix it up, it will create a morbid zone that will predispose us to illnesses. We are not here to heal the physical body, but we're here to be an integral human being with health. So what are we to do in the next 24 hours? Think about the invitation. Do you want to join the task force of Emmanuel? Yes? Do you? This is the first question for us. He's saying, sincere spiritists are the collaborators of our humble task, whose success requires the utmost goodwill. Let's get to work. We will organize the new genetics of beings, working to build the spiritual man or the spiritual human being of the future, when the word of the Divine Master will bring new clarity to all hearts. So we need to coach ourselves with the Christ consciousness, which is all about the good and the good news, right? Feeling the good, seeking the good, feeling the good, visualizing the good, molding the good with all the resources we have at hand. We need to do it, teach our children, and share with one another. Oh, I'm late. Somebody made me be late. Okay, what God wants from me right now? Why is this happening? You're not punished. There's always a good thing at the end of the tunnel. It's on us to see that light. This is called hope. Okay? So tonight we're being boosted in our hope because we're invited to join the task force of spiritual genetics. You want to be in the team? That's your invitation in the next 24 hours. If you want to be, raise your hand, join in, beginning with you, and sharing the good news wherever you are in the world. After all, sincere spiritists are being recruited. It's up to you in your goodwill to join in or not. Okay? And this is our countdown to Christmas. A beautiful invitation. What an honor. Thank you, Emmanuel, working side by side with the team of the Christ in the governance of the earth. And here we are receiving the invitation precisely in the month that we celebrate the coming of the Messiah, the Master, the Governor of our planet. Joy, super joy, joy to the world. The Lord has come. So friends, thank you, Adeli. Thank you. And think about it. Your invitation, my invitation, our invitation. Spiritual genetics, new futures for the new spiritual humans of this world. This was in 1938. I think we're coming closer and closer to seeing this spiritual human being, but we need help. Let us join Emmanuel and the group. A big hug to you. After all, we are boosting our hope and light by several spirits through Chico Xavier here at Kardec Radio. Thank you, friends. Until tomorrow, God willing.